Hello, everyone, and welcome to Developing Palates. I am Aaron Loomis, and I have with me Jiunn Liu. How you doing, June?
Good. How's your weekend going?
Good. It's wrapping up, so it wasn't too bad. How about
Yeah.
yours?
Uh, Good. Still up and came up to Tahoe for the weekend. Uh, Drank a bunch of beer, and now talking about this.
Nice.
No.
So the cigar that we are recapping tonight is the Diplomáticos 2014 Edition Regional Asia Pacifico, which is better known as the Bushido. And this cigar is 7.2 inches, 50 ring gauge. All the stats are out of Cuba. No, no further additional details on wrapper, binder, filler, or anything like that. Um, the box code for this lists the factory as TOS, and the box date is September of 2015. So that's really all the details that are provided that we have. So let's kind of get into pre-light experience. What was your experience with this, June?
Yep. So just kind of before we kind of get into pre-like, I just kind of give an overview of Diplomaticos for folks that doesn't know.
Sure.
Diplomaticos is a Habanos SA Cuban brand that they kind of cut everything on. So in terms of regular production, the only thing that's available now is the Diplomaticos number two, which is that classic kind of like that Monty number two
Right.
Vitola, which is a 6x52 torpedo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what has been interesting about this brand is Habanos SA decided to essentially bring out regional editions of it since 2012, starting with the Spain one in 2012, the Bushido in this one in 2014, which was actually released in spring of this year. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, last year
15, yeah.
supposedly. And then in late 15, they released the Cuban regional, the Excelencia, which is an absolute pain in the ass to get if you have a meal in Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
And then this new one that they just released within this past like couple of weeks, which is called it's one for the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the El Embajador. So I actually just bought a couple of boxes of these. So maybe we throw these up for review in a month or so after get a lot of humid time.
Okay.
So basically, within you know the past few years, there's not much that came out for this brand.
Right.
All of it has been regional editions. The regional ones that I have smoked has been pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing back to kind of like a good old aged Diplomatico 3 or Diplomatico 6 for me.
Right.
Um, so so I was excited to get into this one. This Bushido was highly sought after. Asia Pacific in general gets quite a bit of regionals out there,
Mm-hmm.
and along with Spain. But this guy specifically has been pretty sought after because a lot of folks kind of geek out on this, like that tapered Conde 109 shape
Right.
on the head. So, anyways, with that said, within the pre-light experience, I think first and foremost, you got to call out the wrapper of this guy. It's an absolutely gorgeous Colorado red wrapper.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I actually have two boxes of this cigar. One box, which Aaron and I both smoked out of the same box on, is just absolutely beautiful Colorado red. The other one is more like a lighter pale brown color.
Mm-hmm.
So there's inconsistency in that. Um, so within this particular sample, I thought the Colorado red was really pretty. It was really gorgeous. I thought the actual cigar pack was a little loose, but not too loose, and it felt pretty light on my hand based
Mm-hmm.
upon how long of a cigar it was.
Right.
But in terms of the actual bunching and rolling, aside from the loose aspects of it, it was packed pretty uniformly. I didn't get any soft spots, so to that extent, it looked good. The Conde 109 style head and that tapered look on my example was executed really well.
Yep.
In terms of pre-light experience, um, I got a lot of like a flowery floral perfume aspect out of it, out of the
Mm-hmm.
wrapper. Got some good barnyard cedar. Got a little bit of white pepper spice. And when I drew on the cold draw, still a lot of that floral perfume. Got a
Hmm.
little bit of hay, um, and got a little bit of this like a tingly white pepper spice that's always good. And hopefully, that translates into a balanced spice as compared to just dominance of spice. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah, for me, the
What about you?
first thing I noticed is the size of the cigar. So 7.2 inches, that's a big cigar. So I'm like, all right, this is going to be, if it's good, you're going to have a good long experience. But if it's not good, you're in for a slow ride here where it's going to, you're just kind of banging it out to get this review done. So, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, what you said about the wrapper is absolutely right. Like this is a beautiful wrapper. So, I listed it kind of as medium brown, but it does have a reddish tint to it. So I would say Colorado is probably a really good descriptor. Um,
Mm.
there was a few slightly visible veins, and it was interesting that the veins almost were like they were almost like black, like almost like black, really fine black pin lines that were like
Huh.
on the veins. So it was but you had to look close to see it, and also lots of black dots kind of spread
Hmm.
out all over the wrapper. So almost like freckles. It was pretty uniform. It wasn't like it was just certain parts of the wrapper. It was like
Yeah.
pretty all
I
the way
heard what you
across.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say toothy, but it wasn't like tooth.
Right.
It was like having it's like somebody having freckles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
hear you on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, the 109 head, for people that don't know, it's kind of like a torpedo, but instead of being a pointed tip, it's kind of shortened a little bit at the point and it's rounded off. So I think that's the best way I can explain it. But like you said, it was executed perfectly on there. In regards to aroma, I got a really faint barnyard from the wrapper, and then a light sweet hay from the foot. And then on the pre-light draw, I got like a mellow fruit sweetness, and best thing I could come close to is like maybe plum. So that's kind of what I got, on that pre-light draw. So overall, great first impressions though. So in regards to
Nice.
flavor, what were your experience, kind of first third to final third?
Um, so kind of in general, I absolutely enjoy the first third.
Hmm.
The second and last third is kind of when you could tell that the youth of the cigar,
Hmm.
meaning specifically the strength of it. But from first light, I mean, I got just absolutely balanced, nuanced, medium body and string smoking experience.
Hmm.
Really great interplay throughout the entire really cigar of like that floral perfume, that barnyard. It's almost like this uh, barnyard in the sense of like it sort of reminds me of when I was at AJ Fernandez's Curing Barns.
Hmm.
And when I walked in there, the first thing you notice is, well, it's dark as shit because there's no light in there.
Right.
But in terms of just the aroma of it, it smells like roasted chestnuts.
Hmm.
It smells like roasted chestnuts. It has a little bit of that toastiness aspect of it. It almost has this like damp earth to it, but it's almost like the best way I could kind of explain it is like a fine aged cheese, right? Like you don't get that stinging funk,
Right.
but it's more like a aged refined goodness.
Hmm.
Um, so I got that, and I get that a lot with like Cuban cigars in general. So that's kind of what I mean when I did my written review on calling it Barnyard.
Right.
Aside from that, a lot of coffee and cream, graham cracker, cedar. Um, you know, uh, upon initial light, the tannins was pretty rich, but as after like the second inch or so, the minerality and tannins really ramped up.
Hmm.
So by the end of that first third, um, I felt like the body, the tannins and minerality kind of increased, and it gave kind of like an overall better mouthfeel.
Hmm.
I also felt like there was just a progressing increase of white pepper spice,
Right.
but that white pepper spice never at the point got to something that was too overbearing. It always fit really well with the rest of the profile.
Right.
Um, so that was the first third. That was my favorite.
Hmm.
In terms of the second third, the first half of it or so was pretty similar to what the first third ended as. Within the latter part of that second third, I got a noticeably increased amount of strength.
Okay.
The strength actually hit me so much that it started kind of giving me that head buzz when I get some really strong
Right.
nicotine. Um, and then the body increased as well. So it was nice because the strength also combined with the body increase, that felt like it was on par with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Whether as aside from feeling like it was kind of lopsided, but nonetheless, I personally dislike strong cigars. When I smoke cigars, they're in balance and all that. So I didn't like it as much, and that's kind of where I said it kind of showed the youth of the cigar,
Right.
which is interesting because the first third of the cigar, when you smoke it, you don't realize that this guy was just boxed in like Q4 of last year.
Yeah.
You don't. I personally don't taste it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then also within the increased strength, the spice also increased, that white pepper spice, but it became more from the first third's drier spice to a mouth-watering oily spice.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a good transition, a welcoming transition. And then aside from that, just the cedar, tannin, minerality, and all that kind of gave it more of a depth of flavor. So within the last third, it was pretty much a mimic of the second third. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like at certain points the strength level kind of backed down a little bit, but maybe it's because at that point my mind and my body was getting used to it.
Right.
Um, and I also felt like the cigar got considerably less creamy and sweet towards the last, like, probably inch and a half worth.
Mm-hmm.
And by the very end of it, it was mainly like an interplay of mouth-watering, like an oily white pepper spice, barnyard, cedar, and the richness of the tannins and minerality.
Mm-hmm.
So, all in all, a very complex, young still, given the last couple of thirds. But I think in terms of people that haven't smoked new Cuban cigars in a while, I mean, this is a great example to smoke because, like back in the days, people always say you can't smoke new Cuban cigars. You have to let them out for like years.
Right.
This is not it. And Cuba's coming out more and more of this stuff, and that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, right off the bat, it was creamy coffee in the mouth, and then creamy woodiness on the retrohale. A little bit of spice came in after that, and then I'd say about 3/4 of an inch in, the creaminess from the coffee kind of went away and went back to more of a black coffee. But everything was nice and smooth and mellow, the entire time. And then the retrohale became a little more cedary rather than just kind of a general woodiness. It became a more defined cedar for me. And then kind of nearing the end of the third, some minerality came in on the retrohale, kind of like what you were mentioning as well. But for the first third, strength-wise, it was kind of in between mild and medium for me. Second third, coffee and woodiness is those primary flavors that are continuing on. The minerality dropped off from the retrohale, but there was still pockets of that came in and out as the third progressed. And then I'd say 3/4 of an inch in or so, the creaminess kind of dropped off, and the woodiness really ramped up for me. And then as the third kind of finished out, the minerality kind of rushed back in again, and a little bit of bitterness was there, but it wasn't anything that was off-putting or anything like that. It was just kind of mixing in regards to flavor. Strength still in the middle of mild to medium, so no real change there for me. Final third, the woodiness became more defined as oak, and it was carrying a bit of a char with it. And then the retrohale was also oaky, but it had instead of the char, it had a bit of spice that was kind of mixed in with it. As the third kind of went along a little bit more, I got a little bit of earthiness that came in, and there was also a little bit of black tea that was coming in on the retrohale for me, which was an interesting kind of transition there. But then getting closer to the end of the cigar, the earthiness went away and the minerality came back. So there's a bit of difference between the earthiness and minerality, or at least how I define it. Earthiness to me is dirt. Minerality is mineral taste. Like it's not quite salt, but it's, I don't know, it's mineral water kind of flavor, I guess.
Yeah. Or a lot of people define it as like different like rocks. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Sure.
gravel, like something that tastes gravelly or rocky.
Yep.
I mean, not like people fucking go in and bite into a rock, but you know
Right.
what I'm saying, right? Like
Yeah.
when you smell like
Exactly.
the ocean perhaps and the rocks and all that. So
Right. Yep. And then the strength in this third was just slightly above mild medium. So very, I think you and I had a big difference in how the strength affected us, I guess. So yeah, that was kind of how the flavors went for me.
how does a question for you?
Yep.
There's a in terms of finish.
Yes.
So finish is something that we don't talk too much about, but I want to make a discussion about Cuban cigar and finishes in general.
Right.
How did you feel about the finish on this cigar?
So I'll make a generalization about Cuban cigars that I can't make about non-Cuban cigars. And typically with Cuban cigars, the finish is very light and smooth. And I'm not saying that a non-Cuban can't be that, because they can, but it's not to me, for Cubans, it's almost across the board that way. There might be an exception here or there, but for non-Cubans, it's, I think, more the finish is stronger or harsher or just longer lasting or more intrusive, however you want to describe it. So for this cigar and for most Cubans, I find the finish to be really smooth and just mellow and like where you'd be able to smoke multiples or various cigars and then you'd still taste it, or if you're smoking it last thing at night, the next morning you're not going to wake up still tasting the cigar, or somebody else still being able to detect the cigar on your breath or whatever it is. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. In addition to what you're saying, the word that comes to mind, aside from like the smooth, the mellow aspect of it, also a clean finish comes to mind. I feel like, and that's a generalization within Cuban cigars as well, of what I'm saying. But I feel like most non-Cuban cigars that I smoke, oftentimes it leaves me this more like an acrid, like it kind of cakes your mouth with something,
Right.
And sometimes it even wrecks your palate to taste other things. And I'm not talking about tasting other cigars. I'm talking about just drinks or food, right? Like, I personally dislike drinking alcohol after I smoke a cigar or during when I smoke cigar. I mean, I've done some pairing shows with like Bargo and Seth and that side thing that I do, but when I enjoy the cigar, I don't like pairing it because I think it totally ruins one or the other or both.
Right.
And it's just not worth it because most, like for instance, that Connecticut broadleaf one that we smoked,
the TA 2015 from Tatuaje.
Yeah, that TA.
Yeah.
Right. Like
these are polar opposites.
After that, like we were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like with that, like I woke up the next day and I still tasted that filminess in my mouth.
Yeah.
Whereas this cigar, after I smoked it, brushed my teeth, did scope, all that, saw my girlfriend, and usually she could just spot out exactly if I had a cigar. She's all like, I thought you did a review today. I was like, yeah, I did do a review today.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, okay. So, but yeah, man, I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy Cuban cigars so much, or within non-Cuban cigars, there's certain brands that I enjoy that gives me a clean finish, such as this.
Right.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Performance, burn and draw. How was this cigar for you?
The burn I thought was just average. So kind of ups and down on the burns. The ups were the fact that I felt like the ash held on pretty strong. Pretty sure the ash is like 1.5 inch, 2 inch ash marks. But at certain points, especially after the first ash that I did, the cigar just didn't want to burn in a uniform manner. Okay. And there was a few times where I had to do a little purge and then, draw on it again. Right. But that didn't cause too much of an issue. I only had to relight it one time, and I probably could have not relit that time either, but I
Mhm.
felt like, let's just do it and purge and continue on.
Right.
Um, so those are the I guess the pluses. The real downside of the burn was the fact that my example um, burned really fast.
Mm.
So I think I clocked in at something like 75 minutes or like 80 minutes for the cigar.
Wow.
And that is really freaking fast.
Yeah.
Like when we smoked that short Corona for Southern Draw the other week, I got like 70 minutes out of that thing.
Right.
Uh, so it was weird because when I was drawing it, I could just see the ash just kind of like going at it.
Right.
And I was kind of, in a weird way, it made me feel like, like when gas is really freaking expensive. Well, it's
Yeah.
expensive right now.
Yeah.
But like,
And
you
you're
keep
driving a
going and
Ferrari.
going and going, and you get every little thing going. And you're like, well, shit. Like, and you try to like dab every single thing out of it before you
Yeah.
pump it back in. So it kind of reminded me of that. So to that extent, I thought that burn was average. Example that I have for the draw, it was great. It was perfect. So I actually cut it twice,
Uh-huh.
not because there was char buildup or anything, but I'm a dry smoker, meaning I don't like having the head wet at any point.
Right.
So after my first clip, the head got a little wet, and then I clipped it again, and it was still giving me the same exact draw. So,
Mm-hmm. Nice.
what about you?
Yeah, burn for me was really good for the first 2/3. I mean, there might have been a slight wave, but it always like caught right back up, so it was like not really anything going on. In the final third, though, the cigar got soft on me, and I had to relight it a couple times. So I know you mentioned the soft pack. I didn't really notice. I mean, I felt it a little bit at the very tip of the head when I had first cut it, but I didn't know that it was going to be a big deal for me. But it seemed to be more prevalent in that final third. I didn't really experience anything detrimental in the first 2/3 for it, so a little bit different there for me, I guess. In regards to draw, slightly bit tighter than I prefer. Otherwise, spot on. So, and no effect on the smoking experience. Just a preference thing. Just a little tighter than I like, but otherwise, it was perfect.
Mhm.
So overall, what are your thoughts on this cigar?
I mean, I think given the spectrum of late 15, early 16 Habanos essay releases, not only releases in general within the regional releases, I think they hit it out of the park. I think that the cigar is incredibly approachable right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you have some, it is worth smoking some right now to get a gauge of where it's at. And personally, for me, I think there still is a little bit too much bite to it within that I noticed within the second and last third.
Right.
So I think once you kind of, my best guess is within something like this, you lay down for something like 3 to 5 years, it'll
Mm-hmm.
be an absolutely classic Habanos, and it'll absolutely fire on all cylinders. This cigar kind of reminds me of kind of like how the French does wine, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they purposely come out with something, and especially now, you could enjoy technically a newest release bottle of a Bordeaux, and it is enjoyable,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you also know that if you were to lay it down, it's going to be that much more nuanced, that much more well blended and balanced, and et cetera, and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what the cigar reminds me of. Is it's good now, but it'll turn into something truly classic and absolutely amazing. Give it with some age. So
Okay.
this is a box buy for me. If you can find it.
Right. Sure. Yeah. This was a pretty mellow cigar. I think I had a little different experiences in regards to. I mean, I don't think I noticed the youngness as much as you did, because I didn't have the strength increases or the different flavors in the second and final third that kind of put me off. To me, it was pretty consistent the whole way through. So I didn't have that kind of the large transitions that you did. So for me, it wasn't super complex, which it's not necessarily a problem. But for me, this cigar burned very differently than it did for you. So this was 3 hour. This was a 3 hour cigar for me. So
Oh wow.
um, you know, more more than double what yours was. So,
No.
but the flavors were good. It's just if you have the example like mine that you have it for 3 hours, do you get bored during that time, or it just depends on when you're smoking it? So like, if you're sitting on the beach
Yeah.
or you're sitting by the pool and you don't really have anything to do and you're just going to be sitting there and you want to just like kick back and you're reading a book, you're having a drink, whatever you're doing, this is a perfect cigar for that because you're not like you don't have to pay a ton of attention to it to get nuances. At least I didn't, but it was an
Mhm.
enjoyable and flavorful cigar, so it's definitely worthwhile for that. Um, but I mean, strength wise, anybody can smoke it. It's just it's a long cigar, so there's going to be a bit of a commitment there. So just kind of keep that in
Yeah.
mind. So I would definitely say, definitely worth trying if you can get your hands on it. And I'll kind of go with your advice is, if you can get some and sit on them as well to see what age does to them. That's probably going to be a treat down the road that you'd be able to get to see.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah, we were talking a little bit about the show about lengthwise for the cigar. So something like this, having that long of a burn time, but you had a different experience. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So even if I would say even if I had, I mean, so I wish I had a 3 hour burning cigar on this guy. Uh, but I think if I had that and it still gave me the flavor profile of what I experienced in the 75, 80 minutes,
Right.
I would have been happy with it because one of my main things about smoking a long cigar or big cigar in general or time consuming cigar is the fact that I realize the more and more I smoke, I don't like smoking long cigars. Like I like
Right.
the slimmer ring gauge. I like, I like the Corona type cigars.
Hmm.
So, and a lot of it is because I get kind of bored of the flavors.
Right.
But I think with this example that I had, because I felt like it kind of had it had good complexities builds, it had good transitioning builds, and it kind of keeps you happy with that. And really, the core flavors of it was just enjoyable. I mean, I don't know very few. I know very few people that wouldn't enjoy a coffee and cream cigar that has good woodiness and spiciness to it, right?
Mm.
But is it worth going through that for 3 hours?
Right.
I could see no. Is it worth spending this kind of a coin on a cigar like this? Like, let me see how much this cigar would be. So, like, I mean, even though we don't figure out, um, we don't put in our scores for the price of the cigar. Like
Right.
this cigar, if you could find it at more the MSRP value, is
Right.
$20 a cigar.
Hmm.
So, and I know that in the secondary market, these are flying at hotcakes, like absolutely flying out the door at $48 a cigar.
Right.
Is it worth the 28? For a few, yes, it is. Is it worth the
Right.
$48 cigar? Oh hell no! Like no, in my opinion, very very few cigars or any cigars worth $48 a pop.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
um, but price aside, uh, flavors are great. Good building, transition and complexities.
Yep.
I'm happy with it.
Yep. So
You
score
know,
wise, you gave this an 8.6. I gave it a 6.87. So how do you think the score shook out for you?
8.6 out of 10. That's high.
Yeah, it's high.
Um, 8.6 out of 10. I would say uh, within the flavors, um, I'm okay with the flavors because basically I said whether the first third was amazing, second third very good, last third very good.
Hmm.
Basically one short of amazing on the latter two thirds.
Right.
The only thing that I have a somewhat of a knockdown on is the burn
Hmm.
because I said that the draw was amazing as well.
Right.
So I think this sounds about right. It may be a little higher than, I would have also expected somewhere like an 8 would have been good.
Right.
Um, I think given the proper age of like that, my guessing is the 3 5 years. I think at that point it should be a 9.0 plus cigar, no problem.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think my score is pretty reflective of my experience. Good cigar, not a lot of transitions to go along with the length, the smoke time. I think is probably kind of how it breaks down. I mean, it was it was enjoyable. It just for something that's going to last me 3 hours, I kind of want a little bit of more movement in regards to the story that it's telling me, rather than just kind of floating back and forth between, 2 core flavors and a couple of secondary flavors in there. So, but it's it's nothing that's like blowing my head off in regards to strength. It wasn't lingering with me afterwards for for too long. So I mean, it was completely I would classify it completely relaxing smoke. Gives you a lot of time. So if that's if you can kind of do a correlation between time and cost, this is probably a pretty good value in regards to that. So if you're getting it for $28, 3 hours, it's less than $10 an hour. It's not bad. So,
Mhm.
All right. Any final thoughts on this cigar?
No, our first Cuban cigar,
Yep.
and from the get-go, a wide spectrum of cigars, premium handmade cigars
Right.
that are kind of made. So hopefully you guys enjoy this one, and if you have any feedback, by all means let us know, and then we'll of course take it into consideration.
Yep. So if you're just catching this on YouTube, be sure to check out the site, developingpalates.com, for the full review. And then go ahead and subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on all of the social media sites, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Google+. We're everywhere. So thank you for joining us. Thanks a lot, Jiunn. And
Thank
we
you.
will catch everybody on the next one.